And you just heard it. According to former NBA Commissioner David Stern, Colin Kaepernick would still be playing if he played in the NBA. Max?
Yep.
Do you agree with that?
I do agree with it. I think if the NBA, if the NFL were run like the NBA, if David Stern or Adam Silver were running the NFL, Kaepernick would be playing in the NFL. This does not mean that he handled everything perfectly, or the NBA didn't have certain rules that I didn't love. For example, mandatory participation in the anthem ceremony, right? But you have to understand the NBA in the 70s and 80s, as David Stern pointed out, was not a mainstream league to the extent that it became under Stern's stewardship. Why? Because it was perceived by, for lack of a better term, middle America, as a black league. And that was perceived by a large portion of this country as something to be afraid of. And so what David Stern knew he was up against was an image issue where he had to show people that these are people just like you. It's okay. Don't be scared. There's a dress code when they come to press conferences. See, look, suits and ties, everyone. Is that okay? They stand for the anthem. And I think there was a lot of recognition around the league, the kind of biases that the league was up against. It was not simply because, hey, the players must jump when we say jump. And the Mahmoud Abdul Rauf situation, where formerly Chris Jackson refused to stand for the anthem, they worked, yes, at first he was suspended, but then they worked it out and he still played in the league. And that's what David Stern means as far as I can tell. We would have figured something out. I believe him, Stephen A.
You should believe him because he's telling the truth. Colin Kaepernick would have been playing in the NBA. But I think it's important to distinguish the difference between the Colin Kaepernick that protested and has been exiled from the NFL and the Colin Kaepernick that sued the NFL and has been exiled from the NFL. The Colin Kaepernick that protested, David Stern would have worked that out. I'm not so sure David Stern would have been that receptive to him being back in the league if he decided to sue the NBA. That is a different problem. And that is what I think that we have to pay attention to. When we're talking about Colin Kaepernick, one of the things that rakes my last nerve, people so often get into how things should be. And I appreciate that. But I'm not going to lie to y'all. I'm a black man. And I'm thinking about the way things are. And when I talk about looking out for my people, I like to crystallize for us what the obstacles are so you know what they are and you operate accordingly. If you are Colin Kaepernick, I ain't going to bring up the fact that you were 1-10 as a starter in your last season. I'm not going to bring up the fact that you're 3-16 over your last 19 starts as an NFL player, and that could be justification in the eyes of some owners as to why it's not a priority for us to give you a job, because I know you're being ostracized. I know that you're being blackballed, so I'm not going to use that as an excuse. But what I am saying is this. If you are Colin Kaepernick, everybody's out there quick to talk about sticking out your chest and fight the good fight and blah, blah, blah. All right, that's cool. But you know what's coming down the pike, don't you? Because there's a system in place that says, excuse me, we ain't going to let you elevate but so far. We ain't going to let you flex but so much. And if you do that, we're going to make sure to use you as an example for a price to pay. Eric Reed got a job right here in Carolina. Nobody said that. Nobody said anything about that. They didn't mind this brother getting a job. Why not? Because they understood that in the grand scheme of things, you've got 70% or more of black players in the National Football League. That's like, damn that, this man deserves a job just like Colin Kaepernick deserves a job. But you can make an example of Colin Kaepernick, not only because he was considered the instigator and the provocateur, but also somebody who had the temerity to sue you. And when that is going on, it's just important for us as communities in this nation to recognize no matter how wrong they are, and Max and myself and so many others are going to speak adamantly and emphatically against it, the system that is out there is always going to reach a point where they're going to make sure that you pay a price to set an example because of fear that followers are going to come from the background to come up to the forefront just to make sure. They want to neutralize those people. That's what this is about. So David Stern is making a point, and he's telling the truth as it pertains to the protest. But if Colin Kaepernick had sued the NBA, I'm just not so sure we'll be able to say the same.
Look, this is race is inescapable in all of
Absolutely.
this, obviously. And there's an interesting series of books that one of my daughters reads called "Who is Abraham Lincoln?" Who is, and there's "Who is Rosa Parks?"
Yeah.
And once upon a time, you could have made the argument, hey, you have to understand. If you insist on, and I understand there's not exactly a moral equivalency, but as an example, if you sit down, there's going to be trouble, right? The Montgomery bus company driver says, make it light on yourself, right? And I never buy that argument. Make it light on yourself. You got to do what's right, and you have to stand up for yourself. And eventually there was a boycott as a result of that behavior, and eventually the laws changed, right? And things got better. And I would say that Colin Kaepernick did right by not making it light on himself, right? Eric Reed, yes, he eventually got a job. Why do you have to miss a season? He's a good safety. There was no good reason that he wasn't employed by an NFL team. And Colin Kaepernick, I did not at first say, this is what I eventually said it was, because I'm like, hold up, maybe he's waiting for a starting job. And Colin, you might be a backup at this point. You're kind of a bubble starter. But at a certain point, he's not one of 64 quarterbacks in the league.
Right.
That is nonsense.
Well, getting back to...
So of course, go and sue if you think you're being colluded against.
Getting back to the whole David Stern element, where you can ultimately come to his defense as well. Oscar Robertson, Bob Lanier, Buck Williams, Connie Hawkins, Spencer Haywood, all at one point in time or another throughout NBA history, have gone at the NBA and still has an association with the NBA. So we have to give the NBA credit for that. And then you've got Stern, along with Adam Silver, his successor, who I can never, ever applaud enough for when they went up on Capitol Hill in defense of the players with the whole steroids era and beyond. And they went up on Capitol Hill and spoke on behalf of their product, their brand, and NBA players who are 80% plus African American, and reminded them of what value they have to our society as a whole that transcends the world of sports. So they deserve. David Stern was right to make that statement, and I applaud it. And I hope the NFL is listening, because they could learn a thing or two from the former commissioner and the present commissioner, who, by the way, they were interested in becoming a commissioner to succeed Roger Goodell, if you listen to the reports about Adam Silver.
One real quick thing. Donald Sterling so deeply offended players when he was caught on tape, right? Saying what he said. And I was cynical about this. They'll give him a $10 million fine. He's super rich.
Banned for life.
And Adam Silver came out and said, these players are our business partners. You have irreparably offended them. You're out of here. That showed me the way the NBA operates.
And by the way,
that's why the NFL was interested.
To Max's point, it's not just Adam Silver. LeBron James, CP3 worked behind the scenes along with a plethora of other players to foster that decision that was made about Donald Sterling.
Again, highlighting the point that they're business partners.
And showed out and got him up out of there.
100%. By the way, congrats to Eric Reed. 3-year extension